The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 183 with Janet Alexander from Pacific Fitness and Health, talking all about the ladies.
Hey, ladies!
And they go on the internet, and I'm like, no, you shouldn't be doing it that way because you're an athlete and you're a certain age or you're trying to do certain things. So a lot of misinformation is out there, and that's the hardest thing for them to decide what they should be doing.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast. We have a very, very special episode this week. We're going to switch things up a little bit. We're going to talk all about the female golfer, and specifically when it comes to how the female golfer should be training and how it relates to their body. And this is really a topic that, if you think that golf fitness is still somewhat relatively new, and I think that it really still is outside of our little bubble of people maybe listening to this show and the golf fitness professionals and, the people that are kind of in that network, I think that golf and fitness together is still a little bit of in its infancy stages. So if you think that that's kind of a new topic, well, then this topic is basically still in the womb. And that's kind of a very appropriate way to say that for this episode. And you'll understand why once we get further into the show. But we're talking about the essentials of training for the female athlete, for the ladies. We've only had the opportunity to have a couple female golfers on the show, and hopefully this will open up the gates to have some more professional female golfers on the show to kind of share and spread the word about this whole topic. But women have really kind of gotten the shaft when it comes to golf fitness instruction, kind of like left-handed golfers get the shaft when it comes to regular golf instruction. But we're all about creating strong, powerful, healthy, and happy golfers here at 18 Strong. And it doesn't matter whether that be male or female. And so you're going to hear a lot about the way that a woman's body affects the way that she should be training. And so for this episode, I could bring on no other than the top resource in this whole topic, and that's Janet Alexander. Janet owns and runs Pacific Fitness and Health in Encinitas, California, and she's been working with female athletes, and it's become basically a focal part of her business. Her progressive and creative program design has not only culminated in wins on the tours, but it's also resulted in good hormonal health for her stable of female athletes. So you're going to hear more about her bio in the start of this episode, but just to give you a quick little snippet, she is TPI certified fitness level 3. She's been on the advisory board for the Titleist Performance Institute for many, many years, works very closely with Greg Rose and Dave Phillips. She is a master Czech practitioner. So for all the fitness folk that are out there, she worked very, very closely with Paul Czech and is currently studying under French osteopath Guy Voyer. And as a big-time athlete herself, there was nobody else that was more fitting to bring on the show than Janet. And so in this episode, you're going to hear me get a little bit out of my comfort zone talking with Janet about all the inner workings of the female body and how important it is for women and the coaches that are working with them to understand their menstrual cycle and how it affects everything from their training, from their eating, from their practice, from their skill acquisition. So I know that, guys, if you're listening to this, you might be thinking, whoa, this is a little too much information, but you're wrong. If you work with clients that are females, if you have a wife, if you have a daughter, if you have a sister, if you have a female dog, this is all going to be very applicable to just daily life, but really as far as from a coaching standpoint and from understanding an athlete, a female athlete, this was one of the episodes that I think I probably learned the most about something that I knew the least about. And it really helped me make sense about some of the things that I experienced when I did work with a couple of the female athletes that I do have. So for the ladies listening, this may be the first time that you're hearing any of this information. And if so, that's awesome. And hopefully it brings a little bit of clarity to the whole situation and to your training and maybe why you've been feeling the way that you've been feeling, or maybe what your next step should be that you should be taking. So some of the things that we're going to discuss today are simply how to train properly based on the female menstrual cycle. And if it sounds like that's kind of getting a little too detailed for you, then that's kind of the thought process that I had before, that this was maybe just something specifically for super high level athletes, but really this applies at all stages of the game. So let me ask you this. Did you know that this can drastically improve, knowing this stuff can drastically improve your ability as a female to get stronger in the gym, to build lean muscle better without getting bulky? And we're going to talk to Janet about why that whole getting bulky thing is kind of ridiculous. You're going to find out that there's ways where you can accelerate fat loss based on the timing of your programs. You can prevent injury because your body is more susceptible at certain times of the month to injury due to laxity in your joints and what's going on with your hormones. And also, you're going to learn when it's appropriate to work on high-level skills or high-level tasks and when it's not, because literally your brain is not able to retain some of these things, or it might not be quite as clear at certain times of the month. And that can also play into injuries and what you should and shouldn't be doing in the gym or on the practice range. All right, we're just going to jump right into our conversation here with our expert on training the female golfer, Janet Alexander.
Well, I guess I'm around. I do lots.
That's awesome. So mountain bike racing, cross-country skiing, triathlons. Where are you right now? Are you in Encinitas?
I'm at home.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm at home, and next week my girls come in for the Aviara. LPGA Aviara comes in next week, so I'm actually here, so that's why this was a perfect time.
Yeah.
They're in Phoenix, then they come here, and the week after they're in the desert. So the West Coast kind of area, and then a lot of my Symmetra girls just started this week. The LET girls are on their way home for 2 weeks, so it's a good time to get me.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
How many tour players are you working with these days? Female tour players?
Oh, 7.
Wow.
7, like 7 direct, but I also consult to a lot of the coaches. Like I consult to the coaches about their players, so the players don't know that I know them because I'm going through their male coaches, and so I know who they are.
Sure.
It's just a person, so she's got this problem, and so I'll consult to them. And then I coach the trainers how to talk to their their females. And when the young juniors bring the mothers in, ask the mother that, and then normally what happens is the mom goes, "Can we just speak directly to her?" And I'm like, okay. Then we have a screen, and I've now got the girl, the mom, and the trainer, and we have this big, huge Skype session. So it's great.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, you're behind the scenes. You're working directly with them.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm really excited about this because I think this is a topic that not a whole lot of people are talking about.
No, we may actually have to do part 1 and part 2. It's a huge topic, and no one talks about it, and it's it needs to be talked about and the taboo taken off it. Mm-hmm. It's just that no one knows how to approach the subject. Yeah. And so hopefully, by doing this, people will just know that and get comfortable with it.
Perfect. Well, I couldn't think of a better person to bring on to talk about it. Obviously, like you said, you've been, working with female athletes. You've been a female athlete, your whole life, it sounds like. And sounds like a lot of trial and error on your own that has kind of led you to working at a much, much higher level. So you're, let me just get a little bit of your background straight. Czech master practitioner, Czech golf. You're now studying, how do you pronounce it, osteopathy or osteopathy? Doesn't matter.
Same. Doesn't matter. Guy Voyer's work. So yeah.
So Soma, Eldoa. You're a triathlete. You're a mountain biker. You're a cross country skier. You've got a teaching degree. You're TPI level 3 certified.
Got a science degree. So I have the background. So and also too though, the neatest thing that most people don't know about my past life is I was corporate. I broke all the rules.
Nice.
Because and people don't realize this, that I used to be in the fashion industry. I was a model. So I did that whole not eat, get skinny, do a photo shoot. I know that side of it. And then I became a business and marketing and sales. And for the company I worked for, we launched our McPherson underwear into Australia. So that was huge. And, of course, flying backwards and forwards. And then, of course, I crashed. I woke up on the floor with a little boy going, "Hey, Mommy, she's just opened her eyes." Yeah. And my friends just thought I had gothic makeup on. I was not well. So, yeah, I've been all the way up and down and back again. Wow. So when my clients say to me, you don't understand, I'm like, oh, yes, I do.
Better than most. So then what took you from the corporate world and, kind of going through that situation, and then where did you go from there? What brought you into the fitness world?
Back to the fitness. I started
back to the fitness world.
Went into fitness, went back to corporate, and then back into fitness when my girlfriend, I met my husband, and then we traveled around the world, and then I got back, and after 18 months of being a semi-professional triathlete and just being overseas, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. My girlfriend, who is the owner with Philip Mills in New Zealand, a huge gym chain, and the founder of Body Pump and all those programs, said to me, why don't you do personal training? And I was like, what? Why would I do that? She goes, because I went to university with her, Jackie Mills, and she said, because you've got the background and you've got all the corporates, half of them will be your clients. Mm-hmm. So I kind of called them up, and within a week I had clients. I was like, oh, okay. So that's how I got back into it. And then I met Paul Chek when he was on a lecture tour. And then he said to my husband and I, but at that time we were boyfriend, girlfriend, and he said, what are the chances of you guys coming to the States to help me grow my business? And our first question was, do we get a green card? And like, are you going to sponsor us? And he said, yes. That was in 1998.
Wow.
So that's how we got here, and we helped him grow his program. We were his number 1 and 2 instructors in the world. So we did everything there. And then our paths just were in the middle, and then we just went different ways, but we still stay in contact, and that's it. And then, of course, I was working in golf because Paul said to me, I need someone who's, who can do this, and I'm going to write this golf conditioning book, and you're my girl. I'm like, okay. So that's how I got into golf in 1998. And there weren't that many people back then, so it's crazy.
Awesome. I just listened to a couple interviews with him on this new podcast that I'm hooked on. It's called Mind Pump, and he that's the first time I've ever really heard Paul Chek speak, and what an interesting, fascinating man. I can't imagine the stories that you have about him.
Well, the coolest thing about Paul is that what he does is that he dives into a subject, basically picks the meat and off all the bones, checks it out, and then goes on to the next topic. And so he's thorough. He really is thorough. And yes, there's lots of stories.
I would imagine.
Not for this topic.
Not for this one. Not for this one. Well, speaking of that, let's kind of dive into our topic of the day, because as you and I mentioned, the female golfer, the female athlete, really, obviously we're going to kind of steer towards a golfer, is something that you don't read a whole lot about in, even the golf magazines, but especially when it comes to learning as a practitioner, and we're going to speak mainly to the golfers. Hopefully there's going to be a lot of female golfers listening to this, and so we can kind of help steer them in direction, and you can give a lot of us trainers and medical professionals some direction for us to go if we're working with female golfers. But first of all, why do you think it is that there isn't a whole lot of talk and direction as to how to work specifically with female golfers when it comes to a strength training and physical preparedness, as opposed to just, as you put in your email, just going and lifting weights like the guys? I personally don't work with a whole lot of female golfers or female athletes, or really even many female clients. So let's talk specifically. Let's talk to maybe the women that are golfing. It doesn't have to necessarily be the high level golfers that you're working with on the tour.
Oh, I have lots of weekend warriors as well.
But let's kind of talk along those lines as well, and hopefully we can give. I hate to say speak in generalities, because I know that there's so many differences and different directions we can go in. But I'm going to kind of let you steer the direction that we go, and where you think we can kind of hit the biggest rocks first. And then, like you said, maybe another time we come back and we do a second installment of this.
So I think what you need to look at is golf in general, the traditional aspect of it. And when you can see it in fitness in the men's side, no one used to do the lifting that they're doing now. And it wasn't considered part of being a golf athlete. And we always knew that, with anything, you have to be strong to do what you're doing. And as the club head speed increases, so does the stress on your spinal segment. So you better be strong, and you had better be lifting correctly so that you can do it. Unfortunately, a lot of people who were training golfers didn't understand the game. So they just basically did a bodybuilding program. And so you're stiff as hell and you can't pick up a club. And so when it comes to women, a lot of women have that typical myth of, if I lift, I will get big. Wrong. If I lift, I will get sore. Correct, because you probably weren't lifting correctly, or the person that you were training with was training you like a guy, or it was in the wrong part of your cycle. And then the other thing too is it's intimidating for a lot of females to go into a gym because they didn't grow up with it. And so some of these golf ladies, girls, whatever we call them, females, they don't come from a lifting background. They pick up golf as a sport because either their father, uncle, grandfather, someone played it and they tagged along. And it's not seen as a real sport that should be followed up with lifting in the gym. And it's just so wrong, because when you look at the golf swing, it's like 90% of your 1RM. That's how much weight you can lift for 4 reps. You better have a big, strong spine, regardless of whether you're male or female. And so the biggest thing is trying to get women to understand that they are not going to get big, but they will get injured because they're not the same as men. And so I think what ends up happening is they're scared to lift weights because they don't know. And then let's think about it. When you go to most of these gyms, there's a whole bunch of guys lifting and very few women. And so, but then on the other hand, they go to the women's only gyms, and now they're not really doing the type of lifts that they should be lifting for the sport that they're playing. So it's a myriad of problems, and then they don't have anyone to steer them through, how to do it, where to lift, and then they just come in and they get injured because we know they should be doing deadlifts, but we also know for those of us who've been lifting, you have to do other things before you get to the deadlift. And so a lot of them get injured.
Well, let's go back to the whole myth about, women lifting weights and that's going to cause them to get big. And I've always found this so paradoxical that, typically when you see people in the gym, they're doing, in many respects, things that they don't need to do. They need to do the other side of the coin, kind of,
right.
Like the
Absolutely.
Women tend to need to do some more of the strength training and put some weight on.
And you boys need to stretch.
And we need to do some more of the mobility work. And it's all about us trying to get big. And so women maybe see that side and they're like, well, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to stick over here and do my cardio and my yoga and things like that. Can you explain to women, first of all, why will that not make them big? Because they have this perception that, you lift these heavy weights and my muscles are just going to get huge.
Right. And the thing is, too, is you also have to look at the media, the magazines, and the models that they use. So originally for lifting, it was coming from a bodybuilder-based fitness magazines. And the women there are professional bodybuilders. So they have lifted hard and they've worked their butts off to get that size. But no one has said, hey, these women are lifting double workouts, 6 days a week, eating protein, taking supplements to make sure they're big. And so when they use those women, who I think are amazing, but they use them in shoots that also your golf girl is looking at, it's the fear of being that big because they don't understand it. Now, with women, one thing about us is that we do have our cycle, and there's certain parts of your cycle when you can lift to get heavier, bigger, and other parts where you can do more endurance. But there's no way you're going to get big because there's no way you can be in the gym for that long. They just don't understand the mechanics of how much weight you have to lift to get big. And most women, they're not going to do that because they don't, A, eat properly, B, do enough of it, and they're stressed because they've got so many other things going on in their world. But you have to break it down, and it's trial and error. And I think I'm lucky because I'll show my female, because I'm not a big person. I mean, I'm not scrawny, but I look more like a triathlete. So when I get in the gym and I'm lifting heavy with my clients, they look at me and they go, but you don't have big muscles. I mean, I know it. Neither will you, because we're not doing a protocol for you to put muscle size on. We want you to be strong, not bigger, unless you need to be.
Sure. And I think that's a great distinction, that you can be strong and not be big. Those are two different things.
Two different things.
Two very different things.
Like I've worked with Olympic luge athletes, and they come to me and they said to me, two females, and they said, I need to get 1/10 of a second off my start time. And I was like, whoa, that's power, that's speed. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, these girls were big, but they needed to be big because they needed the muscle to get that kind of force in the start of the luge. So when they were competing at the Olympic level, we had a completely different program to now that they're retired. So they were doing huge, heavy 1 to 3 rep deadlifts, lat pull downs, pull-ups. I mean, endless heavy work. And now that they're no longer doing that, it's a completely different lifting project, and they're much leaner, and so it's just all the protocols that you change within that lifting.
Sure. So when you're working with some of the female athletes that you work with now, what are some of the questions that they come to you with that you think are important questions, and then maybe what are some of the questions that you think they should be asking that maybe they don't?
So there's a distinction between my professionals. They want to know what they have to do to win. All right, and they will do anything to win, and they're prepared to eat anything to win, lift anything to win, sleep anywhere. So, they'll do anything to win. Then you have your amateur girls, and they still want to win, and they want to win their club championship, and they want to beat the Tuesday games, and they want to beat the girls that they're playing with, but they are less inclined to go full on anything to win. Then you get your juniors who will do everything to win, but they're struggling with this body that's changing, and they've got all these hormones, they're trying to be part of the tribe, they're trying to be, they're getting all these different they're coming up with things that we didn't grow up with. Instagram, the haters, the fat shamers. So they've got another stress. So it depends on who the athlete is. Like my teenagers want to know how they can juggle it all and still be able to get good grades and be on the AJGA and, just have friends and not look like a geek. And then the woman in the middle wants to be able to manage everything with coming back from babies and grandchildren. And so their questions are all different, but they all have one same thing. It's, does what I eat make a difference? And I'm like, yes. So that's number one. What should I do to make sure I don't get fat? What should I do to make sure I don't get too big? And I just laugh at that last one. I said, honey, you're not going to get too big because you're not doing enough to get too big. But they all have the same question about what they should be eating, because there's so much out there. And I have this saying, Dr. Google tells them all sorts of different things. And they go on the internet, and I'm like, no, you shouldn't be doing it that way because you're an athlete and you're a certain age, or you're trying to do certain things. So a lot of misinformation is out there, and that's the hardest thing for them to decide what they should be doing, how they should eat, and when, before or after training, when, before and after sessions in the gym. And then the other hardest thing for golf is, what should they eat during their round? They know they should, but they don't know what to. And then you got the young kids who just don't eat anything, and they're just surviving on youth. And then you got your females who are trying to get that 1%, and that's when it comes down to fine detail.
And how do you balance when you're working with these girls? And I would assume, as you mentioned, with the juniors, it is a big problem, that whole body image thing. And so the eating for performance versus eating for, looks, or not eating for looks, that's got to be a huge challenge.
Well, the thing is too with the teenagers, they're actually fun because they come in and they know they can ask me anything. So we talk about thigh gaps and lycra, and I was like, who is saying all this? Who are they? And then I say to them, no, you need to say that these legs are future Olympic gold medal legs. And at this point in time, you don't care that the thigh gap's not there or is there. It's just ridiculous what the body shamers do to them. And then they need to have a good support system as well, which is great. But the teenagers, it's also a hormonal cascade. There's so much going on, and they've got their periods just happening in boys and girls, and there's a lot. And then they have to juggle the whole circuit of all the tournaments they have to do. And then part of it is trying to fit time in, as well as most of them are good students. And then they've got homework, and then they've got to go and see their swing coach, and they really don't have much time. So as a trainer, I have to give them things to do at home. And the other thing too, which is amazing, is that right across the board, the number one question the trainer should be asking your clients is, what does your period look like? What is your menstrual cycle like? Because that is an indication of overall health. If they say to you, hey, clockwork turns up every 28 days, I never know it's coming, it's just no problem, that's normal. But unfortunately, we don't see normal that much anymore for some athletes, because they've got so much stress of their whole schedule that they've got irregularities already happening in their cycle. So if a woman comes to you and they've got menstrual cycle problems, that tells you that their overall health is not good, because it's an indication that things aren't happening like they should be. And I could geek out and talk to you about the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal HPA axis, but that's for another session. But that shows us what's happening, because the pituitary gets the information from the hypothalamus, and then if you're not getting the right hormones being pushed on to the rest of to the adrenals and to the ovaries, it's not happening. And so you're going to get irregularities, you're going to have problems. So that should be a definite sign that things aren't what they should be. And the biggest thing is stress. Huge. And everyone underestimates it. Stress. It's just unbelievable.
So this is a great time to interject here, because I know that many of the male trainers that just heard you say you need to ask your females about their menstrual cycle are kind of like cringing and, holding their ears. And
no, it's easy. Put it send an email. So if you've got a female client, and we can talk about how they can access me and I can tell them what to do, but it's so easy to put it in an email or put it in a form. And if you're working with juniors, if you're working with anyone under 18, it should be shared with the parents anyway, because they're under 18. And so you put it in a form, and you have the female intake form, and it's basically, do you have a regular period? Yes, no. If it's yes, you're good to go. It means you can load her. It means that you can go heavy. It means that she is healthy and she's good to go. If it says no, you're like, whoa, okay. Then you have to ask the next question. Why no? And then what we could do in a later session is how to go through this form. It's really, really easy, because if she's not getting a period, then that means there's something gone wrong in the whole hormonal cascade. It could be that the follicle in the follicular stage, the first half, she's not ovulating. And the reason why you want to ovulate is because then you get progesterone, which now means everything's happening, and then she gets a period at either 28 days or 35, somewhere there. If you're not getting one, something has happened. And it also means that there's a disruption. So therefore, you really shouldn't be loading her heavy, because when you don't get a period, and most trainers don't know this, it can lead to osteoporosis, bone health issues. And so now you're possibly loading bones that haven't fully formed or haven't grown, aren't at the finish of their growth spurt. And so especially with our juniors, the most important ages for females is between 13 and 14, because that's when the body lays down 90% of the bone. And they don't finish growing till 18. So if you've got juniors, you need to be aware of that, but you also have to tie it in with, does she have a menstrual cycle? And if she does have it, how regular is it? And regular for teenagers could be every 42 days. It could be, one every 3 months. That's okay. But if she doesn't have her period, or if she got it and then she missed it, has now missed it, that's a red flag. That is telling you something is going on, and you, by adding more stress of lifting, you could make it worse. But it also means the second thing, you need to see her diet. You need to ask what food she's eating. And because we go back to that Instagram the whole social media thing of, am I too big? Am I too small? Then they stop eating. And then you look at them and they go, no, I'm healthy. And you go, what do you call healthy? Oh, I have a pot of yogurt for breakfast. And then what? And that's it. And then you go and play 18 holes. And what do you do while you're doing your 18 holes? A Laraba for 4 hours. And then what did you eat afterwards? Well, I didn't want to eat because my stomach was upset. So then you look to see what they're eating, and you add that on to the amount of work they're doing at school, the amount of work they're putting into their golf swing. Then they come to you in the gym and they're just too tired. You feel like telling them, go home and sleep. But then that will stress them out because they know they're supposed to be lifting. So it's this huge, big, cluster of lots of little things happening.
Yeah. All of those things are just stress upon stress upon stress. I think we tend to think of stress as, just what I'm worrying about. But I mean, it's the stress on the body. It's the mental stress. It's the lack of food stress. It's all of that kind of plays in. So just to clarify, you said as long as they have a regular menstrual cycle, so it could be 28 days, it could be 30 days, it could be 35, but as long as it's regular for them?
Yeah. So one thing to know, like the young girls, when they first get their period, you've got the estrogen starts coming in, and the receptors in young women, it's very sensitive. So the body's not used to having estrogen. So sometimes it takes at least 3 years for them to get a regular cycle. And so a normal teenage cycle could be 42 days long, or could be 45. It's not wrong. So it could be 45 days. And then as the body matures, then it gets to what will be regular. So regular could be anywhere between 24, 35, but they call 28 bang smack in the middle. So that's why it's like a regular one. But just know that with your young teenage AGA junior girl, it could take 3 years to regulate her period.
Let's take a second here to thank our sponsor for this week's episode, Rad Roller. I know that we've been talking a lot about women in training and what they need to be doing to prepare their bodies best to work their best. And one of those things that we often work on with female athletes and just clients in the gym is simply getting the body to be awake and to be ready to either train or go out on the golf course. And one of the best tools that we found to be able to use is the Rad Roller products. And specifically, I like using the Rad Helix, which is basically a version of the foam roller that has different contours to it and can be used on different areas of the body, especially up and down the spine. It's got the little groove in the middle so it doesn't hit on the spinous processes, but to wake up some of those muscles, those postural muscles, and even kind of getting some of the upper back moving by rolling on the back, the upper thoracic area, and getting all those pieces awake and ready to move. Sometimes that pressure will help to kind of stimulate the central nervous system and get those muscles ready to respond the way that you need them to when you're getting ready to go into a training session or when you're getting ready to hit the driving range. And these products are very easy to take with you when you're traveling, when you're on the go. So if you haven't checked out the Rad Roller products, go to radroller.com. Look at all of their suite of myofascial tools, soft tissue tools, and use the code 18STRONG to get your discount. All right, back to Janet. So quick question, if you find that they do not have a regular period, first step you said is then look at their diet and kind of look at all the surrounding factors and things that are going on. Then as far as maybe somebody to send them to, obviously you said you're going to give us some resources as far as maybe getting in touch with you, but would that be something where we send them to their regular doctor or?
Well, no, because a lot of the time their regular doctor doesn't, it won't answer that because they'll think they're normal. They'll just say, oh, they're teenagers, so they're within normal, but it's not optimal for a future athlete. And so what you have to do is that you can ask them to go and get blood tests, and you ask them, especially with the young girls, you might get them to do ferritin because you want to see what their iron status is, because sometimes they're not stressed, they're just undernourished, and and because they're having heavy periods, they're losing iron, and so their ferritin status is so low that they're fatigued, which means if ferritin's low, magnesium's low, vitamin D is low, there's a whole lot of other things. So sometimes it's better for them to go to a naturopath to help them and also get blood tests to see, because you have to prove it to the athlete and the mother or the father, what is going on in the daughter's status. And so if their iron was higher, then they probably wouldn't be so stressed, because you're trying to look at what is going on in this body. So basically, do they have a period? If they don't, why not? And then the other thing you have to remember, because it gets a little bit complicated, is when you have the follicular phase, the first half of the period, the egg that's going to arrive, it's a race of the ovary, from the ovaries to ovulation. It can take 100 days for that follicle to mature. Okay, so you could have a period problem in May from something that happened in January. That's how you have to remember. So if you get a client, then you say, hey, what happened the last 3 months? And then if they say, oh, blah, 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 this happened, my father did this, or my mother did this, or I had finals. And so then you say, when did you have finals? Finals were in December. So it would be most, acceptable that you have a disrupted period in February. So that's why you have to know that little nerdy fact. So it takes 100 days for it to mature. So you may have a problem in May that was coming from something that happened at Christmas. She could have had 4 tournaments in a row. She didn't recover from them. There's lots of little things like that.
Wow. So much to cover here, Jen.
Jeez. And you thought it was going to be easy.
I know. That's why I don't work with many female. No, I'm just kidding. So let's talk about now. Okay, you find out that you have a golfer. She has her regular menstrual cycle.
Yep.
Now, what are some of the big things you're able to start loading, and what are some of the bigger things now that we can start thinking about more kind of program design wise? And let's kind of go with kind of that middle of the road golfer. You mentioned kind of the little more of the amateur, not the pros, not the juniors, but somebody a little bit more right in the middle.
Right. So does the girl so let's get the middle of the road female. We know she's got a cycle and she's healthy. Mm-hmm. What is her goal? Is her goal to break? Let's get a scenario. What she's going to want to break 80, break 70. What does she want to do?
I'm going to guess if she's listening to a golf fitness podcast, she's probably fairly serious about it. So let's put her, she's wanting to shoot, maybe low 70s, let's say.
Right. And she wants to continually shoot low, and she wants to win her club championship.
Sure.
And she probably wants to go to maybe the state am. But yeah. So what she now needs to do is she has to make sure that she is lifting in the first 2 weeks of her cycle. She has to. And that's because in the first 2 weeks of her cycle, so, period starts on day 1. From day 1 to 7 is when you get your period, so it's bleeding, and that's the sloughing off of the uterus, the urine. And so what you want is that first 2 weeks is where she's going to be her strongest. So that's why she should be lifting. You might give her a day 1 or 2 off during her menstrual cycle, her actual menses, because she may be heavy or just may be uncomfortable. But let's say you give her day 1, 2, 3 off, but from day 4 to 14, you're lifting. And that would be a perfect place for your female serious golfer to get in the gym and start doing some strength, as well as, depending on where she is, on power. But she should be doing the big lifts, deadlifts, squats, split squats. She can also be putting in, like, the end of the first week, she should be doing some jumps. She should be doing box jumps. She should be doing anything that is a little bit power and more for quickness than load just after her period. And then what she has to be careful of is just be around about day 12, 13, 14. That's going to be ovulation. And that's where estrogen is at its highest. And it's where a lot of women are lax. They have increased laxity, so they could get injured. So you don't want to be doing box jumps or anything too explosive around that time, because that's where most women end up with knee injuries and MCLs, PCLs. They have a lot of problems. And so what you would do, so that window is between day 3 and day 12. Go heavy, go hard, and just lift. But you also have to eat properly in that time. They did a study of women, and, kudos to these girls for doing it, but they had a bunch of women and they did single leg press on one leg in the follicular phase. And then in their luteal phase after ovulation, they did the leg press with the other leg. And so they did that for about a month. And then what they did is they found that the left leg was bigger than the right leg due to lifting in the follicular stage. So that's why I say do all your heavy lifts in that stage. And also from a fuel point of view, you have to make sure that you don't skimp on your carbohydrates in that group, because you're lifting heavy and you're using glycogen that's in the muscles. You've got to make sure that you're eating carbs during that 2 weeks. And then you get ovulation. And then the second week is just after ovulation. You can do some lifting, but it's more not power. It's more for strength, sort of like 8 to 10 kind of rep range. And then the week before your period is a really good time it's a fat burning stage, and it's a good time to be doing some long distance cardiovascular work. You would put them on a rower or a bike, because once again, coming up to your period, some women have premenstrual syndrome, or PMS, and so they have laxity as well. And some of them also just lose a bit of focus, because now all the estrogen is low, progesterone is low as well. And so that's why I wouldn't recommend doing anything single leg, throwing medicine balls or something like that just before their period, because they're not some women aren't focused enough because of the hormonal change. And so that's why you try and do your lifts, but you keep them simple. Like you just basic squat, basic, maybe a sumo deadlift instead of a traditional deadlift, because when you turn the legs out, you're locking the sacroiliac joints, and they could possibly get more lax as just before you get your period.
Sure. So I like that. That was interesting. I had never heard that part about just the focus side of things too. Just staying in your lane and knowing exactly what you need to do. Don't get creative then. That's not the time for you to kind of mess around and throw the bands
mess around
on.
in the first half. Don't mess, and also don't mess around about the middle of the cycle, because that's when estrogen is at its highest. And also at ovulation, your body temperature increases as well. So now if you are flexible, you're now going to be even more flexible. Mm-hmm. So that's not a time for you to be doing cute, explosive box jumps, and you want that. You run the risk of that femur shearing across the tibial plateau. You don't want that. Put that before ovulation. And you certainly don't want it just before the period, because some women lose so much focus that they'll be clumsy, or they're just not in control of their limbs. And so it pays to know where your female cycle is.
Gotcha.
Definitely.
And so, and you mentioned because of the laxity and things like that, I would assume that obviously not working on, because we mentioned before, a lot of women kind of go the yoga route or go into all these flexibility exercises. Right. So what kind of guidance do you give us there?
Well, so here's the thing too. Let's go to, so if you know that your estrogen is going to be high and you're going to have increased laxity at ovulation, it doesn't make sense to go and do hot yoga, because you're already flexible and you run the risk of being super more flexible then. And then you also, just before your period, you also have premenstrual tension, and you're not focused. So you could also throw out a joint or a knee or something just before then. And so if you're working with your swing coach, it also doesn't make sense when you're at your best, like at your most vulnerable in terms of laxity, why would you start working on your full swing? Why would you be doing driver work on the day that you've ovulated, when you've got more flexibility, more range of motion, and you're not in control of your body? You run the risk of, and it's only for one day. So you can go do something else, work on your short game, go into the bunker, So it makes sense to also be aware of what will happen. And swing coaches see it. They just don't know why, because they'll go, hang on, I saw you yesterday and you were fine. What's happening now? And it's a good thing to ask. And also it's a good thing for females to know, because they can also just say to the swing coach, I'm ovulating. And then you tell them why. And also too, like, don't give me something technical to do just before my period, because I won't remember. I might hit you with the club, or I'm going to lose it. So just do something that they're good at, or just go and play for the hell of it, rather than doing something technical. So a lot of the swing coaches that I consult to, we do that. So we talk about how many balls they should be hitting, and when it's coming up, and also they can tell by the mood. They can also tell by the clothing that they turn up in what's happening, because, suddenly the baggy pants, it's not the cute Lululemon top, it's not the cute Lululemon skirt, it's trousers, the black. So you can kind of tell by the clothes of what's coming up in terms of their cycle.
Perfect.
They're not wearing white.
Yeah, right. It gives so much insight into, how you can really kind of structure your practices and how you're going to get the best out of it. I know that, you obviously know the guys from Super Speed Golf, and we love their overspeed training system.
I've known Kyle since he was 14.
I did not know that.
He was one of my original clients.
Was he really?
Yeah, when he was 14. Yeah.
And now he's kind of completely followed your path and is and is now, has one of the most popular golf devices out on the market.
Exactly. He's a legend.
It's incredible. Yeah. But, so there is so much emphasis these days on hitting a ball far and swinging faster and those kinds of things. So again, this is huge knowledge for these female golfers to have on when would be a good time to do some of this overspeed training and when would not.
And also speaking about, about Kyle's work, is that, I've talked to him about this as well, is that he has a protocol that, you're only supposed to do X amount of reps, and it should be followed. I mean, of course people go, I'll do more. And so if you're strong, and if you have muscle mass, and if you are a female that has a lot of muscle mass, then you may be able to do more. But you also have to be cognizant of where you are on your cycle, because if you're doing that at ovulation, when you've got high estrogen, or just before your period when you've got high relaxin, you could cause a facet joint problem. You could have laxity in your vertebral column. And it's not that it was what you were using, it was the fact that you were doing it at the wrong time in your cycle. So I train all my females, whether they're professional or not, just to be really aware of because if it doesn't feel right, it's not. And it just means that something is happening, and we just blame the ovary, because the ovaries take 28 or 35 days to do what they've got to do. It's a hormonal series. You can't stop it. It's normal. And so what you need to do is put your golf practice slot it into where you are so that you don't get injured.
Sure.
And then I also say to clients, just because you hit 500 balls a day, why would you do that when you know your body on that day is susceptible to being injured?
Yeah, more is not always better. And to go back to that protocol, it's when you're working on that speed and you're trying to you need to take your rest, and you need to take the limited amount of reps, because if you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, you're actually going to just kind of wear yourself out, put yourself at risk for injury, and you're not going to get the effectiveness of the way that protocol was designed.
Correct. And so the thing is too is, it comes again. So then you look at the diet. And so if you put it if you want a really bad situation, is someone not paying attention to their diet, eating inflammatory foods, shutting off the abdominal wall, Then they have their period. So now there's inflammation from that as well. Then they pick up a club and start doing speed work at the wrong time of their cycle. It's not the club that did it. It's the fact that they did it at the wrong time for too many reps without the support of a system that was strong. And so that's how I explain it to my clients, and they go, oh, so therefore I could do it on this day. And I'm like, yeah, you need to get a period tracker. They're free. It's an app. Put it on your phone so that it tells you where you are and what you should be doing. And it's like all my female clients have one. It's one of those things that all trainers, all female golfers, if you're listening, go and get one online so that you can track where you are so you know to stay out of the trouble zones.
Yeah, just to have that knowledge of what's going on when, I mean, for me, this is just a hugely eye-opening episode, just talking about all this stuff. And I mean, this is honestly, I never really thought that I'd be talking about the menstrual cycle on my podcast here, but even just, I mean, I'm a married man. I have a wife, and like even some of this stuff. You
understand her so much better.
For sure. And I've even been kind of helping her, recently with some of her workouts and things like that. And so this is such top-notch knowledge here to be able to pass on. All right, there's one last thing that I want to kind of touch on. You brought this up to me. I didn't even really think about this kind of angle before we jump into a couple last-second questions here, is just, in today's society, there's so many things going on in the news that we see, sexual harassment issues and things like that. And we've got a lot of...
see her.
Exactly. Yep. A lot of male trainers working with female athletes and female clients. And I know that you've got a lot of insight on, how can a person like me, or even a female trainer working with a guy, however, it goes both ways. What are some of the things that we should really be thinking about when working with some of these female golfers and athletes? You mentioned having the parents on emails. That's one thing, obviously, to definitely have. But what are a couple other things that we need to think about? We need to think about, and I think we take it for granted that everyone's going to be comfortable with for the fact that they're in a gym. But some of the women coming to the gyms have been told they need to get strong by their swing coaches or, friends. And so they arrive and they have no knowledge when they first arrive of what is expected and what happens in a gym. So you have to teach them the basic rules of how to lift, what is appropriate clothing, what is appropriate shoes, and you do it matter-of-factly. Like you're going to lift, so you can't wear those shorts because when I get you standing upside down, the shorts are going to fall down. So you need to have a pair of shorts that got bike pants underneath so that when we're doing Swiss ball work or hamstring curls, I'm not seeing up your shorts and you're not trying to pull everything down. You also have to have the conversation, or you put it in a piece of paper. Can you please make sure you have appropriate sports tops, because you don't want the boobs falling out and you don't want them not lifting arms because the top's going to come up and they don't want to show their belly. So you have to have something about appropriate clothing to lift, appropriate clothing to stretch, appropriate footwear to lift, so you have all that. And then you have to go through, and even trainers should look at it, appropriate touch, like how do you cue, where, and you have to ask them, is like even yesterday, I'm working with a client I've had for years, and I said, hey, can I touch you here? I need to show you on your body where you should feel it. She goes, oh, you don't need to ask, but I did. Yep. You have to ask, especially if you don't know them and they're new. And so you have to talk about appropriate cueing. Do I touch a leg? Do I touch a glute? Do I use a stick, a rule? Whatever it is, but you have to have their consent and always know that when you do touch, it's appropriate. And so they know the reason why you're doing it to activate glutes. And especially when you're doing abdominal work, sometimes what I'll do is I'll put their hand under my hand. So they're touching and then they'll go, oh, okay, I feel it. But I think especially with new people who have never used to being in a gym, they don't know what's appropriate or not. So you have to teach them. And then the other thing is that depending on what the rules are in your studio, show them where the bathroom is, show them where the shower is, show them if they're going to get dressed, curtains get pulled. You don't just
they stand there because you want them to be comfortable in your environment. And we take a lot of it for granted. We forget that some of these golf athletes have never been into a gym before. They don't know the rules. They just walk in and there's a whole bunch of boys with sweaty tops on throwing weights around, and they're the only chick, and they don't know. And so they leave or they're uncomfortable. So you have to make them feel comfortable, especially if they are brand new to lifting. And then you also have to tell them what to eat afterwards. And it also helps to have a whiteboard in your studio so you can draw things on it and take photos of it, of what you said. So it's a record of you telling them, and also you can send that to parents so that they know what you did while you're there. And the other thing too that I do lots of is that I film the exercises with the cues, so they have them doing it and me talking, so that the parents, if they're younger, can see that I'm real and that they were there. But you also just build up a catalog of their exercises, so God forbid if they get injured, they know what to do when you're not there.
Yeah, I think having I use the Edgify app. I don't know what app you use.
Yeah.
But that has been so helpful for any client, whether it's somebody who's been in the gym for a long time or not, but when you can video them with the cues that you're verbally giving them, or even tactile cues or whatever. But I think there's just something about them seeing themselves do it that also kind of brings that mental connection back to that exercise also.
Sometimes they'll ask me to do it because they want to see how it should be done. And so then that way we'll have both. Mm-hmm. But I do think that we as trainers, we don't always introduce people to the gym and show them what it is. This is this is a squat rack, this is a deadlift, this is where you're going to do a cable. And a lot of them have never seen it, especially the new ones. And also some of the women coming into the gym for the first time. And you want them to stay, because once you get them, most of the golfers who are serious about becoming really good golfing athletes, they're committed. Every day they'll be in there if you want them to be.
Awesome. All right, Jan, I know we're going to have a lot more topic to cover in another episode, so we'll save the rest for that one. I do have a couple last-minute questions for you here that hopefully you know are coming. First is Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore?
Can I say both?
No.
No.
Got to pick one.
Caddyshack, then probably Caddyshack. Yeah.
All right. Love it.
Come on, ask me my song.
If you could pick a walk-up song for the first tee box, what would your song be?
Well, I'm from Down Under, being a New Zealander, so it has to be a band from Down Under. So you know that it has to be AC/DC and it has to be Thunderstruck.
Awesome. Awesome. If you could play 18 holes of golf with anyone in the world, past, present, or maybe even future, who would it be and where would you play?
Okay, now this is me being defiant. I would play at St. Andrews with Alice Cooper.
I hear he's a huge golfer, isn't he?
Absolutely. And it would be him or Danny DeVito. You have to have one of them. It has to be fun. Can you imagine going to St. Andrews with either of those two?
I cannot. Danny DeVito would be even...
It would be hysterical. I've seen him at a charity event. He was too much fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. And any last piece of advice for hopefully all the girls and women that are out there listening, but really for everybody that's listening to the podcast, all the trainers, professionals, and golfers, any last words of wisdom from you?
Just remember that for every female that you're training, or for every female who's out there doing golf, your menstrual cycle is an indication of your overall health. And for you to be able to be passionate about your sport, you just have to remember that if the wheels are falling off, there's a reason, but you can go back and put them back on. And it normally is something to do with your diet, sleep, stress. And so there's a whole lot of things that can happen, and you're not alone. There are things that you can do. You don't just have to put up with it. It's not normal for it to be a problem. And so, and if you can find me on Facebook, I've got a Facebook page, Female Hormonal Health, and also, at my business, which is pacificfitnesshealth.com. I'm about to start a women's website as well, but once I find that out, I'll let you know. Maybe on the second time, I'll tell you what it is, because I'm getting so many people wanting information, and so have to get my act together and do that.
Perfect. Well, when you're ready to do that, let's get you back on here. And actually, that'd be a great opportunity for us to take a lot of questions from the audience, from this episode. And
then we could do the question, answer the questions. That would be perfect.
And if you don't mind, I'll put you in our private 18 Strong Facebook group. And, that way, if, we can kind of start some conversations in there, but we can really kind of get some more questions for the second time around. That'd be awesome.
That'd be amazing. Awesome.
All right,
cool.
Janet. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to jump on the 18 Strong podcast with us this week. And again, we'll have you on in the near future to answer the rest of those questions. But I can tell you that I probably learned more in this episode than I have in many of our previous episodes. And this was fantastic. This is definitely an eye-opening conversation for me and hopefully for a lot of girls and guys out there.
And the crazy thing is, Jeff, we haven't even scratched the surface.
We're just getting started.
We're just getting started, darling.
Awesome.
You have a good day. Bye now.
You too.
Okay.
If you would like any more information on Janet and her training or just how to get in contact with her possibly, go to 18strong.com and look up the episode number 183 or just search for Janet in the search bar and you will find all the information there. As we went through this little chat, I realized that this is really something that isn't being talked about a whole lot throughout the world of fitness in general, but especially for the female golfer. And so now that you understand this a little better, and I'm really kind of talking to especially the women or the coaches that are listening to this. And so now after you listen to this interview, now that you understand or when you understand this information a little bit better, I'm going to encourage you to spread the word, pass this along to the other female golfers, maybe the junior golfers that you know, or the amateurs or the higher level, or even the women that are golfing in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whoever it is. It really applies to everybody. And so in order to help us kind of spread that word, I'm going to ask you to do two things. I'm going to ask you to first subscribe to the 18 Strong podcast and leave a review, maybe just about this episode in general, if you'd like. And then second, we're going to do a little giveaway of some 18 Strong gear, some hats, some shirts. We've got even some ladies' tank tops for spreading the word on this episode. So I'm going to have you then find us on Instagram, and we're going to put up a post kind of giving you the details on how you can enter into the little giveaway by sharing this episode or simply by tagging people in that Instagram post to pass along the word to help get this out to all the female golfers, all the coaches that you know out there. Okay, once again, I just want to thank you for being here, for joining us on the 18 Strong podcast. Hopefully you will tune in for future episodes and go back and listen to some of the great episodes that we have in the past here. Just one last quick shout out to our sponsor for this week's episode, radroller.com. Be sure to go check out all of their incredible myofascial and soft tissue products at radroller.com. Use the code 18Strong. And until next week, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.